Almost 1400 years ago, a group of 72 men, women and children stood in the face of 30,000 soldiers in the deserts of Karbala. Among the 72 was a man known to be as one of the leaders of the youth of paradise. He was a man who refused to bow to tyranny and ignore oppression. He was a man whose slogan and message resonates eternally through the winds of time. He is Hussein ibn Ali, the revolutionary martyr and the grandson of the Messenger of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. This film seeks to understand why this battle is important to millions across the globe, what it taught humanity, who holds on to the message, and why the world refuses to forget Hussein.
One of the most important thinkers, clergy, and an example in his life, in his talks, in his thinking, and of course in his stand in life. A person who never compromised what he believed in.
To understand the importance of Imam Hussein, we need to go back to the time of the Prophet himself.
Sayyidina Imam Hassan and Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma are such profound, unique qualities that cannot be underestimated.
Karbala, for me, is a battle and a symbol of the collide between Yazid, whose ambition, political ambition, blinded him and did not see the importance and the role of Al-Imam Hussein. So when he fought in Karbala against Al-Imam Hussein and his family and friends, and was ready even to go to the extent of killing them, he gave the ugliest face of the merge between religion and politics.
Everybody accepts that Yazid is a very bad example of Muslim life, let alone of Muslim leadership. He openly disobeyed the commands of God, he openly disobeyed the Sharia. It's a crisis of leadership and a crisis of deciding how are you going to respond when injustice and tyranny is facing you. Now, we have here a hadith of Prophet Muhammad which enables us to get a sense of the importance of this. He says on one occasion, the greatest jihad is to speak the word of truth into the face of a tyrant. This is the highest challenge to any human being, to actually face down a tyrant and not give in. So this is what's going on in the mind of Hussein in Medina with his community, and he knows that in a very short period of time he is going to be faced with the demand to make an oath of allegiance to Yazid, who he knows to be a totally unworthy person to lead the community.
The body was severed and cut into, mutilated in fact, into many pieces, but Imam Hussein did not give the hand because the hand symbolized a pledge of allegiance, and we have the system of bay'ah, and the bay'ah is to promise never to aid and abet in or solicit the fasiq or the fajir, and to aid and abet those who are clear violators of the Quran and the Sunnah to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And today, if we learn this lesson, it would be the most profound U-turn that any nation has ever taken instantaneously.
On his journey to Kufa, which was brutally intercepted in Karbala's deserts, Imam Hussein was joined by 72 members of his family and loyal companions. This fact in itself upholds the nobility of Hussein, for he was prepared to sacrifice all he had and all he loved to maintain the purity of his grandfather's divine message.
Something dramatic has happened in the Muslim community at this stage. We're not even yet 50 years after the death of the Prophet, and we are about to see the Prophet's own grandson being massacred. The night before the battle, Imam Hussein gathers together his people and says to them, look, tomorrow we're going to be attacked. Please, it's me they want. Go away, leave. And they respond, we won't go, we will stay, we will die with you. And now we see another huge human dimension of the question. What do you do if you are the supporter of an upright, honest, just person who is facing injustice? Do you stand with him, even at the cost of your own life? Or do you run to save yourself? Now remember, none of these people knew what was going to happen. So we're not only talking about them being willing to sacrifice their own life, but also the lives of their women and the children. Is there anything in life worth dying for? Is there anything so important that you are prepared to take a stand on it and not give in, even at the cost of your own life?
The petals of the beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the children of Sayyidina Imam Ali Karramallahu Ta'ala Wajhahul Kareem, who were placed upon the shoulder of Rasulullah ﷺ, and whose lips and whose cheeks and foreheads were flowered with the love of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Imagine being born to that family. Imagine that body, that flesh being and emanating from that source. There is absolutely no doubt whatsoever with the verse of the Holy Quran and the mandatory requirement of the love of the Ahlul Baytul Athhar. قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى. Tell them, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are so humble, you don't want to request anything from anyone, but rather إلا المودة في القربى, except that you have love for my family. Such a beautiful notion. It doesn't take much expense. It doesn't take anything other than this consideration for the love of the Ahlul Baytul Athhar.
Karbala tells me, as a Christian priest, be very careful that faith does not go down the road of competition to control people's lives, but rather to give an example of sacrifice. Al-Imam Hussein did not sacrifice his life in order to control the people. No, he sacrificed his life as well as Jesus Christ sacrificed his life, that we may have life, that our lives become better quality. So it's a matter of quality of life rather than it's a matter of a political game and political ideology. Al-Imam Hussein faced with courage and with enormous faith the corruption of religion. And I do believe that the corruption of the best is the worst, and the corruption of religion can be demonic. And Yazid gave the example of the ultimate corruption of religion, where Al-Imam Hussein gave an ultimate example of the purity of faith.
Characters from the battle have become symbolic. There is Hur, who betrayed but was forgiven, and Abbas, the heroic half-brother, whose hands were mutilated whilst trying to quench the thirst of the children.
Al-Hur is lined up with the Umayyad army, and he knows that he is soon going to be given the order to attack. And he breaks ranks. And he rides down to Imam Hussein, he throws himself from his horse, and he asks for his forgiveness. I am the one. I have brought you to this place. I have corralled you in the field of your own death. Hussein raises him up, forgives him, and restores him to human dignity. Imagine the spiritual strength of one who will raise up the person who has brought him to the point of oppression. They are short of water, and somebody goes to try and get water, and so we have a heroic story. The half-brother Abbas goes to try to get water and bring it back to give it to the women and the children of the community, and he is cut to pieces in the process. Hussein actually takes out his own infant son, a baby in arms, and pleads with the Umayyads. I know that you've got it against me, but why should you have it against the baby? Give the baby water. Have mercy on the child. If you won't trust me with the water, I'll leave the child on the rock and you can give it water. And the response is to kill the child in the arms of his father.
In all of that situation, he did not abandon Salah, he did not abandon Siyam, he did not abandon Zakah, he did not abandon the akhlaqun Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Firing that arrow and coming through the neck of one of the beloved son of Sayyidina Imam Hussein in response to one drop of water, that was the only thing that was requested. And it is this drop of water for which Imam Hussein had also made a promise that I will ask my grandfather to intercede for you if you were to just give a drop of water. So you see, before you enter into a contract with anyone, you must look at the value that they have. Will they be able to fulfill the value of the contract or the pledge that they are making with you? Today, our biggest problem is that we have all the three qualities in our leadership that we should not have. Ayatul munafiqi thalathun. The qualities of a munafiq are three. إذا حدث كذب, when he speaks he lies. إذا وعد أخلف, when he promises he goes against it. وإذا اؤتمن خان, when you entrust something to them, they embezzle in it.
Imam Hussein does not belong to one group. He has been acknowledged and revered by figures of all demographics and denominations throughout time.
If we are to understand the meaning of Karbala, we need to take it out of an Iraqi context, out of a Shia context, out of a Muslim context, and to see it as a piece profoundly of human drama. As a community, we have a history. We didn't just start with our own generation, and we can look back into how other human beings lived the human project. We can take examples from them. We can also take warnings from them. These are the circumstances that led these people to do these terrible things. This is the person who in this situation responded in this wonderful and noble way.
It can only and only give us positive things to take back, no matter which group we belong to.
Don't believe that the message of Al-Imam Hussein is limited to a race or a nation or a religion even.
Remembering, keeping alive, commemorating those events gives us something upon which we can reflect in our own human lives today. I as a Christian would also want to take my own lessons in remembering the events of Karbala, to remember the day. We have a phrase, to keep the day as holy. Holy not in the sense that this is a wonderful thing, but holy in the sense that this is a profound moment of human history. And then to remember the events, to keep them alive. The word remember doesn't just mean, oh, I recall the facts. It means, in a sense, remembering them, reliving them. They live on in my life and memory. And so I am reflecting then, what do those events mean for me today, and how do they speak to my human condition? I think the second thing is that Imam Hussein is called the Prince of Martyrs. And as the Prince of Martyrs, he gives an example to every human being of total surrender, total submission to the will of God. Because the martyr is one who makes the total surrender of their life to God. Even my very existence is in your hands. If it be your will, I will accept death at the hand of the enemy. And this reminds us of the human need to surrender all to God, to acknowledge that we are the servants of God, that our lives do not belong to us, they belong to God. And if it should please God that I should die at this time in this way, who am I to complain? Who am I to say to God, I know better? So martyrdom is a profound example of human submission, of human acceptance of the divine will in all things. Now, we may not be called to martyrdom today, but we are called to submit to the will of God today in every way. So remembering the events of Karbala are a way of remembering the human vocation to be the servant of God.
The grandchildren of the beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the upholders of the Quran and the Sunnah to Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam, why should they not be mentioned when they have given every last drop of their blood for the sake of the Ummah to Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam? It is only rightful that we are able to remember, commemorate, because in remembering and commemorating, you are telling the foes that here we are, they are not forgotten, they are alive in our heart. Allah has preserved their bodies, Allah will preserve them forever. If the severed head of Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala an was still reciting the Quran on the spear, then our iman has not moved from there. Our iman is that he still is reciting the Holy Quran. This is the maqam, the karama of Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu ta'ala an, and that we need to commemorate personalities like that. It is mafrudun alayna, it is fard upon us. It is the only way we can show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are submissive to you. How can we be submissive to Allah without remembering his anbiyas? If we want to remember the anbiyas, we will have to follow their sunnah and their advice. How can we claim to have remembrance of the anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam when we do not remember those people who have preserved the actions and the sayings and the doings of the anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam? And they are the greatest and the elite amongst us. Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. Indeed, the awliya Allah, the friends of Allah, are those who have no fear or worry whatsoever, because they've never done anything for their own sake. They've only done things for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think there is often a misconception and misunderstanding that the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah do not commemorate Muharram. Myself, I am an Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In here we have not only 10 days, but the whole of the month of Muharram is commemorated and dedicated in the remembrance and building up from the verses of the Quran to the Ahlul Baytul Athar. So we consider them absolutely valid. We consider mentioning them part of our ibadah, part of our way of life. The Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah maintain the importance of the dhikr, and the importance of transferring the pledge of the love of the Ahlul Baytul Athar. I am from among that category, and I sincerely love and I am connected with the Ahlul Baytul Athar.
What I find so attractive about the life of Imam Hussein is the many dimensions of his life. Even just in these few days leading up to Karbala itself, we see some remarkably virtuous aspects of the life of Hussein. He is generous and kind with the enemy. He gives them water. He gives their horses water. He gives them, as it were, human dignity and respect. The way that we treat our enemy. Are these fellow human beings like me? They have mothers and fathers, they have wives and husbands, they have children and families just like me. The ultimate human responsibility to take another human life. Another great thing that I take from the story of Hussein is his courage. It's easy to talk, but when you're actually waking up to face the field of battle, facing certain death, facing an uncertain future for the ones that you love, for your wives and the children of those who stand with you, it takes courage to stand your ground. And human courage is a very important part of the dignity of being human, in small things and in great.
We learn lessons of bravery, and we learn lessons of istiqamah, steadfastness, and we learn an immense lesson of sabr. Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave triumphance, and how throughout all of this process the Ahlul Baytul Athar steadfast upon the teachings of the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi
was the enemy. And the battle was going backwards and forwards. The two of them were fighting together. And eventually, Ali overpowers him, has him on the floor, and is just about to kill him. And his enemy from the floor spits into his face. And Ali puts away his sword and walks away. And his own supporters are saying, "What are you doing? You had him. He was on the floor. He was in your hands. One stroke and you would have killed him." And Ali responds, "And I would have done if I could have delivered that stroke before he spat in my face. Because then I would have been acting with right motives, with right intention. But once he spat in my face, I was so angry that he had insulted me in this way that I would have been acting for the wrong motives, the wrong intention, and I could not kill him in that situation." Now then, this reminds us of the morality of warfare and fighting. It reminds us of how you treat your enemies when they are captive, and we see the way in which the women and children of the field of Karbala were treated with inhumanity, with disrespect, without human dignity. Is that an appropriate way to treat another human being, just because they are your prisoner? We see the way in which the dead are mutilated and destroyed so that you can hardly find bodies to bury.
The life of Sayyidina Imam Hussein, and as he moved from one area to another area, those who were the instigators, those who were sent by Yazid, those who were sent by other leaders to instigate and to follow the Ahlul Baytul Athar, the methods that they developed and adopted in order to get confession or in order to frighten them away, is something that is reflective of what we see in our society. We ourselves have become cruel to our own people, and these are sunnahs of Yazid and his ways.
I choose the word selfless to describe him because he could bravely go beyond the temptation of being a caliph or a king. He went beyond the temptation of power, the temptation of authority, and he chose to give a lesson of self-giving, forgiveness, accepting to sacrifice his life in order not to compromise his beliefs and faith. And sacrificing yourself for what you believe in is definitely a big sign of being selfless.
Hussein dies in the desert. His followers are killed with him. These are, in the terms of the world, pretty insignificant acorns. And yet it reminds us that God's acorns grow into mighty oak trees. Because here we are, 2,000 years after the time of Jesus, 1,400 years after the time of Hussein, and we remember them, and they are examples to us still, and their names live on in the lives of their followers in ways that they could not possibly have imagined. And it reminds us then, in our life of faith, what matters is not the impact that we have, how can we measure it, but how faithful are we to what God calls us to do and to plant, in the trust that the acorn that we plant today, however small it may be, in God's good grace and in God's good time, can grow into a mighty oak. This is the life of faith. We do not ask to see results now.
Their mentioning softens our heart when our hearts have become, rigid and harsh. And so it is the Ahlul Baytul Athar, it is the love of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it is the karamat of the Ahlul Baytul Athar and the mu'jizat of the beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that softens our hearts and makes us and our pledge become reaffirmed to our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam.
Without Imam Hussein, without his courage, without his perseverance, without his revolution, without his martyrdom, the world would not be what it is today.
We should celebrate the achievement of Al-Imam Hussein. Look at the impact of such a person, not only on his community, on his religion, his impact on the world. So without him, the world will be a poorer place in wisdom, in faith, and in courage. And because of that, I feel it's an opportunity for me as a Christian to look at a great person like this and celebrate his life.
Every day we have the opportunity to live the Karbala spirit. Every day we have the opportunity to show those higher virtues that Hussein showed. And so Hussein becomes a role model, an example for every human being.
There is no better word than a rose. A rose without color, made out of light, can you imagine? That gives off a fragrance far better than any other rose. There is no better word than the word rose. The word rose petal occurs in Hadith Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Many other words, there can always be an exchange of a better word. Our words are manifest and dependent on our ability to grasp and there will always be. But the description of them being a rose certainly befits them.
Although differences exist between world religions, Hussein is a tying knot, connecting all believers and non-believers alike to their inner humanity. Memories of Karbala will forever be etched in the minds of believers and revolutionaries, for Hussein goes beyond our vision and understanding.